welcome to a bonus episode. A special bonus episode. I don't know, I just like the way that sounds. Of Vulnerability Time. The topic of this episode, it's not going to be long, but the topic of this episode is going to be doing it afraid. Okay? So, I want to talk to you a little bit about the journey of this podcast and how this podcast almost did not start. Um, so it's been about a year and a half since it's been a year and a half be- before I started episode one of season one. It's been in my mind for a year and a half, oh, I should do a podcast. Maybe I'll do this, or, maybe I'll do that with the podcast. But I was so afraid, okay? I was so afraid to start because I was very insecure about putting myself out there, for the world to judge, whether, that be good judgment or bad judgment, just being vulnerable and putting it out there. Okay. And also, I have a big insecurity about the sound of my voice. I do not like the way I sound. Okay. Now, I also want to mention, and remember those two insecurities that I just mentioned. That's going to come up here in a bit. Um, but I also want to mention how I actually recorded um, an episode of the podcast that has not been released because it's been deleted. Because I was researching and just looking at how others have done their podcast, and I compared it. I was like, okay, I got to be just like that. And I tried over and over and over again to, you know, um, create the episode. And I kept having to start over because it was not perfect. And then it's just like, well, I'll keep going and then I'll just edit. It would have been way too many edits. It would have been way too many damn edits. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Or I'm just going to do this raw, unedited, and really soak in what vulnerability is. Okay, and vulnerability is, it can be defined as many things, but in this context, it is defined as just being present, but not being perfect. Being present, not perfect. Okay. And I know, no one's perfect, yada, yada, yada. However, we can oftentimes, and um, we can, we can oftentimes um, put that standard of perfection onto our lives, and it can manifest in a multitude of ways that whether we recognize or can see, or whether we don't recognize, um, whether we acknowledge it or refuse to acknowledge it, and though don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for professionalism, but I do not believe that there's ever a time and a place for perfectionism. Unfortunately, that is a lot of the societal pressure, and just traditional pressure um, that we are unfortunately consumed by, and we're not bad people for doing that. You know what I mean? We can't help it. We can't help that perfectionism has, seeped its way into our lives and permeated. I just wanted to say that word permeated because it sounds really cool. So I was just looking for an excuse to say the word permeated. I'm just going to say it again. Perfectionism has permeated its way into our lives. I am childish. Okay, I'm childish. I did not need to say that for a fifth damn time, but here we are. But yes, and so gosh, that is, see, there I go. Now I lost my train of thought. That's what I get for being childish. But but okay, I got my train of thought back, I think. So yes, there is a time and a place, for professionalism. You know what I mean? Like at a job interview, things like that, however, oftentimes, at least speaking for me, and I just wanna ask y'all this question. Do you oftentimes find yourself having to be perfect? And you're not a bad person for doing that, okay? You're not. I want to take the shame off of yourself, okay? Take the shame off of yourself. You know you're not perfect deep down, whether we admit it or not. I know I'm not perfect. This world knows it's not perfect, but it seems like we're when someone else is looking at us through their lens, that's, and I'm me included, you know that's where that pressure can also come from of, okay, I got to be perfect. Why? Because I got these eyes looking at me, and I got these eyes looking at me. I got those mouths waiting for me to mess up. I got those mouths waiting for me to do good. So it's just like I got to be perfect. Or is it, I just got to please everyone, everything around me? So that's what it made me think of for myself. Am I a perfectionist still? Or am I just an individual that has to please society around me? And I'm not saying people pleaser. That's not the type of pleasing that I'm talking about, although that can be a part of perfectionism. I'm talking about when we're at a place where, I don't need to please people. Fuck that. you know, but we can unintentionally, because perfectionism has manifested in multitude of ways that we don't recognize. Could we possibly, go out into society, and though we don't know an individual personally, or they're not in our small circle for us to even care about pleasing them, we can forget that it can be folks, not even in our circle, because it's like you don't know these people. Anyone could say anything, good, bad, in between. So it's like we have to uphold an image in order to protect ourselves from the unnecessariness of judgment. Okay? And I'm not saying all judgment's bad, yada yada yada, but there are people and there are things out there that don't have our best, they don't have best intentions for us. So it's like that judgment, how do we know from this random stranger or from the public eye that, this person's judgment is truly meant for my good, truly meant to help me grow? So, going back to pleasing and perfectionism, they can go hand in hand. I'm not talking about people pleasing. Okay, I just want to reiterate that again. Pleasing, okay? Could that be one of the remnants or one of the branches from the time when we used to be engulfed in perfectionism? um I don't know, that's just something to think about. Some of y'all might not relate to this, some of y'all will, you know um and regardless, if you were relating to this, if you see this in yourself, do not beat yourself up. Do not beat yourself up. I welcome your honesty. I validate your self-awareness. I validate your contemplation. Okay? You notice it. Just take it one step at a time. You notice it. You don't have to have the answers today. You don't got to fix it today. You don't even got to fix it yesterday. You don't even got to fix it next week or next year. It's just something to notice, and you take it on your own time. Okay, now I completely forgot the subject of the topic of this episode. Um, oh yeah, doing it afraid. Don't you just love Vulnerability Time podcast? We can start at somewhere and then end up something completely different. But guess what? What if it was needed to be said or needed to be heard or whatever? So doing it afraid. So this podcast, originally, the title of this podcast was going to be called You Are Not Alone. That was the original title of the podcast. But because I was so consumed with perfectionism that it broke me. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna go for it. And though I am so afraid, I'm just gonna go for it. And you know what? While I go forth with it, you know, um, I'm gonna change the name of this podcast to Vulnerability Time because you know what? I suffered at the hands of episode 0. Okay. Um, and y'all, yes, a lot of good can come out of perfectionism. A lot of good can come out of pleasing. You know, but that's the thing. I wonder, and I'm asking this to myself, is it worth it? Is it worth it to, because eventually, though the good can, there are some good things that can come out of pleasing and perfectionism. I wonder, as that keeps going along, we can unintentionally and intentionally, just be focused on those who we haven't pleased or those that we got to be perfect, in front of. Notice I said in front of because we're not perfect. Um, I don't know if that makes sense. Let me try to explain it a little bit better. If I can't explain it, oh snap. I don't know what to say then. But so it's like it's like we're gosh, what's that track stuff called when you relays. I think is that what it's called. I used to be in track and cross country. I should know what this is, but I think it's a relay race when you hand the baton, okay, or something like that. You hand the baton. Oh gosh, I hope my coach isn't listening. Oh, if he is, screw you, you toxic masculinity fool. I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding, but I'm kidding. Anyways, so it's like we've held the baton of perfectionism long enough and we're running and running and running. We're running. Okay, no, this is a terrible analogy. Damn it. Hmm. Oh, pretty much if it stays with us long enough, it can blind us to the good that it has brought unto us. There we go. Boom. Did it. Go me. But so oh yeah, I know where I was going with this topic. So perfectionism played a part into why I was so afraid to even start this podcast to begin with. For folks who do not know, this podcast is in the top 14, 4 top 14% most followed podcast in the world, and it is in the top 30% most shared podcast globally. I want to thank y'all for that. Okay? But this never would have happened, you know, had I just let perfectionism um consume me. And that's the thing about perfectionism. You know what I mean? Fear is natural. Fear is natural. It's a protection, survival, coping mechanism. And then there goes perfectionism. And perfectionism is just gonna inflate and manipulate fear to do whatever the fuck it wants to us. Whatever it wants to us. And I look back and I have to thank God. I thank God that I started this podcast. I couldn't do it without God. And y'all who listen to this podcast, y'all know I'm not a person that just speaks Christianese and oh God is good because the Bible says so or because it's no. Like I gotta know that for myself. I'm not gonna say it just because someone told that to me. You know what I mean? Like I'm just not gonna be cliche with it. You know what I mean? If I don't mean it, I'm not gonna say it when it comes to like the God aspects because I'm like, look, God, if you want me to say something, you're gonna have to show it. Like I know, walk by faith, not by sight. Look, that's not me all the time. Oh well, that's not realistic. That's not realistic. Okay? I feel like I've been screwed over by faith and by sight. So I'm like, look, I'm just gonna sit and you're just gonna have to do. Okay? I will believe when I'll try my best to believe, but if I fuck up at it, hey, sight's gonna have to back it up. Or faith's gonna have to back up sight. They're gonna have to back up each other. That's how I am right now in my life. But I have to thank God. I have to thank God, because I really did not want to go forth with this because of perfectionism. So what I'm trying to get out of this, folks, is I'm glad I did it, and I couldn't do it on my own. I couldn't do it on my own. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that because y'all know we are huge for support and not doing things alone, on this vulnerability time podcast. Uh-huh. And so, is there something in your life, hmm and you are afraid to do it? Now, I want you to ask yourself, and I'm sure a lot of us can have something that we're afraid to do, and that's normal. You are not a bad person to be afraid. You better be afraid, okay? Um, but guess what? We can do it afraid. We can still do things afraid. Some of the best things on this earth that has been done is because someone did it afraid. It's not going to be easy. It's not always going to be easy, no matter what Disney movies tell us. You know, I wish that were true. I'm telling you, I could live in a Disney movie if I was given the opportunity to just live in a Disney movie, a Disney world just for one day when things just fall into line. Oh, I'm telling you, especially if Prince Charming fine as hell. I look, you don't gotta tell me to lose my glass slipper. I will strategically place a glass slipper on the ground just so Prince Charming can find it. Look, look, I don't gotta, you don't, look, I don't gotta lose it. No, I will willingly, purposely, I will purposely, accidentally lose that damn slipper. So Prince Charming, hey, if this was in a Disney world, am I right? Am I right, somebody? We love Disney. I love Disney. Let's be honest. We love it. We love it. But it's not the reality all the time. So, is there something in your life that you are afraid to do? Okay, and then ask yourself, what what is the root of that fear? Is it out of protection or is it out of perfectionism? Okay, ask yourself that. Okay, and regardless of what the answer is, I need you to know. I'm going to be honest with you. There are some things in my life that I was afraid to do and I did it and I did not like it. Um, Very few times that I have regretted it, but I have regretted it at times. Um, just I'm talking about just things in my life in general. Um, However, okay, though that is true, though that be true, there are also, a part of the things that I, did out of, even though I was afraid to do. Um, I knew my answer after it was done. I knew if it was a yes or if it was a no. I'm like, you know what? I know my answer now. Now I can let it rest. And then there are some things that I did not like, and there are some things that I regretted. Okay. Now, not all the things that I didn't like, I didn't regret all of them, but there were some of them that I regretted. And I was like, I wish I just didn't step out. But if I hadn't stepped out back then, I wouldn't have had, the small, and I mean small amount of confidence to even step out in things in my life now. You see, fear is a beautiful thing. It is. It is. One, it shows you that you are human. Two, it just makes your story sound even much more better after you step out of that fear. And I don't mean step out of fear like let it go. No, bring the fear with you when you step. That is a part of your story. There are so many people that are afraid to do something and they are just waiting for your story to be told so that you can encourage them and tell them, guess what? I didn't wait till fear stopped being a reality. Because let's be honest, most of the time, we're going to be afraid to do things. If someone tells you otherwise, then they are a robot. Okay? We need real people. We need real people. Okay? Fear is a thing. It can also show that you care. It can fear can mean a multitude of things, folks. Um there is someone waiting for you to do something that you've always wanted to do. You could find the love of your life. You can just learn yourself, help others. You can get the biggest smile on your face. And I will say this, I look back even in the moments that I regretted stepping out on my fear or stepping out with my fear, excuse me. I am so glad I did it cuz in the long term, it gave me a small amount of confidence. And I mean just small. I mean literally small. Even till this day, small. It's not big. That's just me. The small amount of confidence to step out on something because I know. I was like, you know what? I did it before. I can do it again. I did it before. I can do it again. And now look where we are. I love this podcast. I love it. I really do. I love it. Um, I enjoy the special guests. I enjoyed. See, this podcast was only for at least when I first started it, it was only gonna be for like this is my mindset was the world just needs healing. We just need to hear that we are not alone because once upon a time I needed to hear someone be vulnerable, and I never did. I never had that around me, so I walked through the shit alone. Um, so I was like, I don't want anybody to ever have to experience that. And so I'm just thinking, oh, this is for other people, other people, other people. And then I get on here with the special guest and I get floored. I get healed. I get encouraged. I get inspired. I start crying. Tears of joy, tears of gratitude, tears of grief, tears of just awareness. I was like, whoa, I didn't learn that or know that about myself, but now I do. Now I do, thanks to that special guest. So, the moral of this story is, folks, hey, you, you're not a bad person for having fear. If you have fear about doing something, that is step one. You're already way ahead of the game, way ahead than you think you are. If you have fear about doing something, that is step one. Okay? Let that fear be. Let it, let that fear do what it does. Sit in that fear, but don't sit there too long. Okay? Feel your fear, feel it. You know what I mean? And then slowly start contemplating or slowly start dipping your toes in the water with fear. Do not wait for fear to be gone for you to do something. Do not do that. Okay? Use the fear. It is needed for your story. It is needed it's needed for you to go through something with fear, to do it afraid in order to encourage and inspire thousands of people that need to hear, guess what? This person, you who's listening, this person, you did it with fear. You didn't wait for fear to be gone? Because I'm sitting here waiting 5 years and I'm still afraid. So, therefore, according to a lot of things in society, I gotta not be afraid in order to do something. Or according to myself, I gotta not be afraid in order to do something. And I look at this person who's been afraid for 6 years and then decided to step out with that fear. And now look at them. They got the love of their life. They got this, they got that. I can do it too then. Because this person that I look up to, which is you listening, someone's going to look up to you and they're going to need you to step out with your fear. Step out with it. Don't be ashamed of your fear. Do it afraid. Do it afraid. I do it afraid. I can't tell you how many times I've done things afraid, and I'm so glad that I did it. It was all worth it. It was all worth it. Now, in the moment, it there are some things that I'm just like, yo. But in the long term, um, I'm so glad that I did it. And I did not do it all on my own. There were sometimes I did it on my own. There were sometimes I did not do it on my own. Um, so I want y'all, I'm saying that because I don't know that you don't have to do things alone. You know what I mean? You can do something afraid and do it with somebody. You know what I mean? It doesn't always have to be on your own. Sometimes it's gonna be like that. Sometimes it shouldn't be like that, and it's just gonna be like that because sometimes life gets on my fucking nerve. Let's be honest. Sometimes we aren't supposed to do things alone, but life is gonna force us to do things alone sometimes. Now, it's not gonna happen with everyone, but I want you to know, yes, that sucks, and it should not be like that. Um, However, I want you to know you can still do it. You can still do it because you have the courage to be afraid. You have the courage to be afraid. That takes courage to be afraid. Why? Because it takes courage to be human. It takes courage to acknowledge it to yourself. Just like it takes courage to step out, it takes courage to be afraid. Look, you're already at step 1. Go research the change model, the process of change model, okay, and how pre-contemplation is a huge factor. How contemplation is a huge factor. Y'all are already, if you are afraid to do something, you are already at step 1. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself a pat on the back. So, with that being said, folks, this has been a bonus episode of Vulnerability Time. Do it afraid. This is your sign. You may be listening to this and thinking, is this for me? Yes. Yes, it's for you. It's for you. You go do that thing afraid. You do that thing. You do it. You got this. You got what it takes. You already got the courage to be afraid. You got the courage. Fear. That's the thing. Fear. Fear is necessary. Fear is necessary. Okay? Fear is the protection. Okay? Um, so when people say don't be afraid, oh, thanks. Oh my God, so encouraging. I really feel like you're in the storm with me. I wish it was. Oh my God, I wish it was so. I didn't know it was that easy just to not be afraid. you know, it can internalize that whole thing, that mindset of, oh, I can't be afraid. That's the only way I can do something is if I can't be, if I'm not afraid. No, you be afraid and you still do it because you got the courage. You got the courage. I bet no one's told you that, huh? That it takes courage to be where you are at right now. Let that fear be fear and let your fierceness do it with the fear. Do it. This is your sign. With that being said, this has been a bonus episode of Vulnerability Time. If no one has told you today that I'm talking to you, if no one has told you today that you are loved, that you are lovable, please let me be the first to tell you you are lovable. I swear to God, you are so lovable. You are loved. You are valued. You went through all of that and you're still here. You went through all that and you're smiling right now. Remember that time when you thought you weren't gonna make it? And look at you now. You're still here. If you can make that, you can make anything. You got this. And if there's something really on your heart that you really want to do, I'm not talking about go murder people. I'm not talking about that. You know what I mean. If there is something on your heart that you've been wanting to do, if there's a dream you want to go after, do it afraid. You will not oftentimes see results in the beginning. I didn't see the results in the beginning, okay, with this podcast. It wasn't until, you know, shit, towards the, um, what is this? When am I recording this? So I'm recording this currently December 28th, 2022, okay, 8:30 p.m. Let's see. It wasn't until a month ago, almost a month ago, that I found out how huge the podcast went. How many people that is healed thanks to you, thanks to the special guests, thanks to God. Just, I mean, I would not have known this. And this has been so healing to myself as well. Because I'm like, I still don't like the sound of my voice, but I dislike it less. I hate it less because I stepped out, and it took me a year and a half, folks, of just sitting there having the courage to be afraid. Because that's a form of confrontation, that's a form of awareness if you are afraid. So I just need y'all to know y'all are way ahead. Y'all are way ahead of the game than you think you are. Y'all are doing so fucking amazing. Y'all are badasses and y'all don't even realize it. You go tell yourself in the mirror, say, hey, you fine ass badass. You got this. You got this. You got this afraid. You be scared and you still do it. You scaredly do it. That's not a word, but I wanted to say the word scaredly because it sounded cool. Scaredly. Try saying that 10 times. Scaredly. Nope, I'm not even gonna try. But this has been another episode of Vulnerability Time. I will see y'all next week to whatever that episode will be. Bye, folks. Stay beautiful.
Hey there, if you liked this episode, go ahead and buy my book on Amazon. What the book is called, type it on Amazon. It is Spoken by Trenton Epizon. Epizon is spelled Epizon. I really would appreciate the support. Give it a review, give it a buy, give it a try. And I promise you, you will not be upset at it. It is a poetry book. It is a very easy, quick read, and it definitely will give you some healing and some insight and some wisdom on abuse, mental health, recovery, the tragedy to triumph. You will love it. Give it a buy, give it a try, and recommend the book and this episode with others. Go ahead and give this podcast a follow and share it with others. You could be the reason that someone is alive tomorrow because you decided to share this episode today. This podcast is about saving lives, healing ourselves and others, and encouraging others and ourselves as well. Thank y'all so much for the support. Love y'all. I life y'all. I will see y'all next episode. You are valuable. You are beautiful. You are still on this earth because you have the strength. Thank you. Bye, folks.